I'd like to welcome everybody to this webinar. This is a webinar where we're going to be exploring the journey that has led us to the declaration of an International Day for Judicial Well-being. And I'd like to welcome every participant and all our esteemed panelists. Now, I'm pleased to extend the best wishes of our Vice Chancellor, who is a strong advocate for judicial well-being. It's our custom here at the Australian Catholic University to give an acknowledgement of country. So on behalf of all our elders past and present, we'd just like to acknowledge the first people of the land. Now, for too long, stigma around mental, physical, and emotional stress has prevented members of the judiciary from speaking up, seeking help, and prioritizing their well-being. The reality is that judges are not superhuman. Like everyone else, they face challenges and require holistic well-being to deliver sound judgment and serve society effectively. And the reason why we're gathered here is because on the 25th of July, 2024, the Nauru Declaration on Judicial Well-being was adopted at the Regional Judicial Conference on Integrity and Judicial Well-being. Now, this landmark declaration underscores the importance of judicial well-being in maintaining a resilient and effective judiciary. And it sets out 7 core principles aimed at acknowledging, raising awareness, and addressing the multifaceted challenges faced by judicial officers. And it's for this reason we're here to explore the journey that has led us to the declaration of an International Day for Judicial Well-being. Now, in a historic development on the 4th of March, 2025, the United Nations General Assembly formally designated July 25th as the International Day for Judicial Well-being. It was done via a resolution that was submitted by the Republic of Nauru, and it was co-sponsored by 70 nations, including Nigeria and many countries represented here today. For you to understand the overwhelming support that this resolution received, 160 votes out of 164 voted in favor of this resolution, just 1 against and 3 abstentions. Now, as part of its commitment to Principle 5 of the Nauru Declaration, which emphasizes awareness raising, the Australian Catholic University has actively contributed to the global campaign for judicial well-being. And that's why on the 31st of October 2024, that's last year, we hosted the ACU webinar on the Nauru Declaration on Judicial Well-being. And today we are glad to continue this conversation as we host this webinar on the adoption of the UN International Day for Judicial Well-being and its global impact. Another thing you might want to know as we push towards awareness raising is that as an institution, we are conducting a study on judicial well-being in the Pacific region, which we're looking towards assessing the state of judicial well-being among judicial officers, identifying regional specific challenges, and proposing evidence-based strategies to strengthen support system. We are grateful to the organizations that are funding us on this research, and they include the UNDP, the UNODC, and the PJSP. Now, the inaugural International Day for Judicial Well-being will be observed in a few months' time, 25th of July, 2025. And as an institution, we are eager, we're excited about the fact that we are going to also take steps to commemorate this landmark occasion. So I would just enjoin you to look out for, information around this. Today, we are honored to host 7 esteemed panelists who will share their insights on judicial well-being, the Nauru Declaration, and the significance of the newly established UN International Day. Unfortunately, the Honorable Lionel Ngima, that's the Minister for Justice and Foreign Affairs and Trade of the government of Nauru, who was set to deliver the keynote address, is unable to join us today due to unseen official commitment, but you can see his support because the government of Nauru has, have not only helped towards the declaration, but they were the sponsors of this resolution that has led to this day. He sends his best wishes and he's asked that his speech be read, and and that will be done. I'll just quickly introduce our panelists. We have Honorable Judge Victor Rees is a former judge in Colorado and a judicial well-being advocate. He's led international training on judicial resilience, domestic violence, and vicarious trauma, working with judges worldwide, including in Ukraine, Costa Rica, South Korea, and you can just keep naming it. We have Marie Peggy Kokosio from the UNODC. She's the head of the UNODC Pacific Office, overseeing anti-corruption and transnational crime programs across 14 Pacific nations. She has an extensive UN experience in conflict zones, including South Sudan and Afghanistan, and holds law degrees from the University of Melbourne and from Paris. We have Honorable Justice Lynn Leach from Canada. She's a former regional senior judge and past president of the Canadian Superior Court Judges Association. She has worked on international justice projects in Ukraine, Mexico, Peru, and serves on the UNODC Global Judicial Integrity Network. We have the Honorable Justice Sir Gibuma Gibbs Saliki. He is the Chief Justice of PNG and has been in that position since 2018, and he has over 40 years of legal service. We have Dr. Carly Sherver. She's in Australia. She's a lawyer, a psychologist, and judicial well-being researcher. She led Australia's first empirical study on judicial stress and co-drafted the Narrow Declaration on Judicial Well-being. She's a principal researcher at the University of Western Australia and a consultant on judicial well-being programs globally. We have Honorable Justice Brian Skills from Jamaica, and he's the Chief Justice of Jamaica and a leader in judicial reform. He spearheaded Jamaica's first strategic plan for the judiciary and played a key role in drafting the Narrow Declaration on Judicial Well-being. Last but not the least, we have Honorable Justice Rangajeevi Wimalashena. He is the president of the Narrow Court of Appeal with a judicial career spanning through Sri Lanka, Fiji, and Nauru. He initiated the Narrow Declaration on Judicial Well-being and led efforts to establish the UN International Day for Judicial Well-being. Since 2024, he's been closely collaborating with the Australian Catholic University to raise awareness and advance dialogue on judicial well-being. We have a sterling panel here, and I would like to welcome each and every one of them here and say thank you for sparing the time and making out the time to be here. We have Dr. Pickering, who is going to be moderating the session, and my name is Associate Professor Kunliola. I'm chairing the session. I just want to say thank you, everyone, for being here, and I'm happy to pass it on now to Dr. Ann Pickering, who will then, steer and moderate. Thank you, everyone. Dr. Pickering, I think you're still on mute.
Thank you, Dr. Ola. We will conduct this panel session by posing questions to each panelist, and time permitting, after the first round, we'll do a second round of questions. Very briefly, for the benefit of the attendees who won't be able to ask questions or make comments during this session, if you have any comments or feedback, please send us an email. You're more than welcome to send us an email. We would also appreciate it very much if you complete the survey at the end of the webinar. Thank you. So I will turn to my first panelist, the Honorable Justice Rangajeevi Wimalasena. Justice Wimalasena, last year, you led a team of judges from around the world to draft the Nauru Declaration on Judicial Well-being. The Thomas More Law School here at the Australian Catholic University considers it a privilege that we could hold a webinar on the Nauru Declaration of Judicial Well-being last year. Now, this year, Nauru took the initiative to submit a resolution to the UN General Assembly to declare an International Day for Judicial Well-being. During a very short time, Nauru has come up as a leading champion for judicial well-being. I'm sure this may seem simple from outside to us, but there's a lot of background challenges that you've faced in reaching these goals. Before we dive into discussing judicial well-being with the other panelists, could you share with us how the International Day for Judicial Well-being came about?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Pickering. First of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the Australian Catholic University, the Thomas More Law School, and particularly the Executive Dean, Dr. Andrew O'Neill, Associate Professor Kun Leola, and you for championing this judicial well-being discourse. And we know that the global discussion on judicial well-being has only gained momentum in the last decade. But surprisingly, judicial well-being and judicial stress still remains topics that are not openly discussed in many jurisdictions worldwide. However, it is encouraging to see that several jurisdictions have done studies and implemented initiatives on judicial well-being. But most of these initiatives are either limited to their jurisdictions or to specific regions. So we felt that this issue needed to be addressed on a global scale so that judiciaries around the world can take action on this issue. So we thought that if we have a global scale initiative, they can openly discuss and approach in a structured and uniform manner. So while judicial well-being requires a context-specific approach, many aspects of judicial stress are universal, regardless of jurisdiction. So recognizing this last year on 25th July, as Dr. Ola said, a group of judicial leaders and experts from various regions came together to draft the Nauru Declaration on Judicial Well-being. However, I realized that simply adopting a declaration would not be enough. So we needed continuous dialogue on this issue. We all know that judicial stress and well-being cannot be addressed sporadically. They require ongoing attention and action. And on the other hand, if there is a global discussion, even the judiciaries that have not acknowledged this issue or have not paid much attention to it will be compelled to do so if it is recognized as a matter of universal significance. That is why a proposal was made to the Republic of Nauru to consider submitting a resolution to the United Nations to declare an International Day for Judicial Well-being. And the objectives behind establishing an international day was to create global awareness, to build momentum annually, and encourage judiciaries worldwide to prioritize judicial well-being throughout the year. And I'm pleased to note that the Honorable Lionel Langimia, Minister for Justice of Nauru, warmly welcomed this proposal and understood the importance of it. And he later got the cabinet approval, and the resolution was submitted to the UN. And today, I take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to the Honorable Minister for Justice and the Deputy Minister for Justice of Nauru for their support and encouragement in advancing this important initiative. And as you all know, Nauru, one of the smallest jurisdictions in the world, has now left a lasting legacy by championing this cause on a global stage. And this entire process has been a remarkable demonstration of teamwork. So I make this opportunity to extend my sincere gratitude to His Excellency, the President of Nauru, the Cabinet, the Department of Justice, the Secretary for Justice, the Department of Foreign Affairs, the Judicial Department, the Acting Chief Justice of Nauru, the Registrar, and every individual who supported this initiative. And also, I would like to thank Nauru's permanent representative to the United Nations in New York, Ambassador Daniel Lara and her team, and particularly the First Secretary, Josiane Jacob, who played a significant role in this process. And As Dr. Pickering, you asked, this was not an easy task. We faced many challenges, but at the end, we were able to achieve this goal. And it is extremely encouraging to note, as Dr. Ola said, that 70 countries co-sponsored, and apart from the 160 countries that voted in favor, 70 nations took the extra step to co-sponsor the resolution, demonstrating that this is a matter of universal significance. And judicial well-being has now been officially recognized by the United Nations as a matter of global importance. And this resolution invites all UN member states, UN organizations, including the UNODC, judicial institutions, academia, Association of Judges, and other stakeholders to observe the International Day for Judicial Well-being annually. And I must also say that we chose 25th July as the International Day because it was the day that the Nauru Declaration on Judicial Well-being was adopted last year. And as a judicial officer who has served in multiple jurisdictions for the last 20 years, I have personally witnessed the effects of neglecting judicial well-being and failing to address judicial stress. And it does not only impact judges, but reduces the efficiency of judicial institutions and ultimately erodes the quality of justice we deliver. However, I must reiterate that what is emphasized in the Nauru Declaration, judicial well-being, is not only the responsibility of judicial institutions, but also the responsibility of individual judges. We all have a shared responsibility to promote judicial well-being. And we are just 4 months away from observing the first ever International Day for Judicial Well-being. You must be wondering, how should we meaningfully observe the International Day? I think as a start, I would invite the judiciaries and the judges associations who have not taken any evidence-based measures to promote judicial well-being to launch a judicial well-being study on the 25th of July this year within their respective judiciaries. And to begin with, you can do this study with at least 10 key questions to assess the state of the judicial well-being in your jurisdiction. So we will start from there. And finally, I would like to take this opportunity to wish every judge around the world a meaningful International Day for Judicial Well-being in advance. Thank you, Dr. Pickering.
Thank you, Justice Vimalasena. Thank you especially for giving us the context to what we are celebrating today, the International Day for Judicial Well-being. There's no doubt that Nauru has done a tremendous job in service for judges globally. So thank you again for sharing your thoughts, Justice Vimalasena. My next question is to the Honorable Justice Lynn Leach from Canada, who we are honored to have here with us today. Justice Leach, you're the president of the Commonwealth Magistrates and Judges Association, as well as a member of the advisory board for the Global Judicial Integrity Network of the UNODC. You work with a lot of judges from around the world and in fact represent their interests. My question to you is, what do you think that this declaration of the International Day for Judicial Well-being, why do you think it is important for judiciaries around the world?
Thank you, Dr. Pickering. I'll just quickly say that I certainly endorse and concur with all of the expressions of appreciation and gratitude that Justice Vimalasena has so graciously put forward. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. I'd like to say that the fact that an organization as auspicious and as important as the United Nations has recognized that there is a link between judicial well-being and judicial integrity is significant. Such a link, I don't think, was readily apparent to many people But because of the initiative of UNODC in conducting a global survey of judicial well-being in 2021, the first ever of anything of that nature, the survey revealed that many judges believed that attention to judicial well-being would enhance the efficiency and the quality of justice and courts administration. As Justice Willemesine has already mentioned, is extremely important and essential to the maintenance of public trust and public confidence in the rule of law in each of our jurisdictions. Certainly, those of us who were involved in drafting the declaration believed that the promotion of judicial wellness ensures that judges have the capacity to serve the public, which is our most important function. And what was very interesting to me is that our discussions amongst the working group revealed that regardless of where judges lived and worked, regardless of their experiences before their appointment, regardless of the nature of their tenure, regardless of their role within the court, the experiences and concerns about the challenges to fulfilling their judicial responsibilities has increased because of very common circumstances throughout the globe. There has been an increase in security issues everywhere, a concern about adequate resourcing of the justice system, the public scrutiny of judges and their decision-making has increased, workloads have increased, and the time constraints imposed on the judiciary have increased. So all of this is to say that this declaration and concerns about well-being are significant to judges everywhere. The value of creating this declaration and identifying these 7 principles acknowledges the importance of judicial well-being and that it will reinforce the integrity of the judiciary and ultimately benefit the public that we serve, which is, I think, a very important point that judges want to have appreciated, that concerns about well-being are ultimately ones that, if resolved, will benefit the public. The fact that the issues that I've mentioned have been acknowledged in this declaration should lead to the promotion of judicial well-being around the globe. It identifies that well-being is important. It is a shared responsibility, and it can be enhanced by the promotion of initiatives and practices, some of which are identified in the declaration. The declaration is a forward-thinking, encouraging document, and the attention that will result to the issues that I've mentioned will be valued and appreciated by judges around the globe. It will change perspectives, in my view. It will hopefully change practices and attitudes, all of which are important to judges everywhere. So it has been a pleasure to be involved in this. And again, I'll just end where I began with the fact that because UNODC has supported this project and drawn attention to these issues with the passing of the declaration, or I should say the Day of Judicial Well-being, is a very important first step in shining the light on these issues.
Thank you, Justice Leach. Thank you for your insights and giving us an understanding of how important this initiative is for judiciaries globally. And very appropriately, my next panelist is Marie Coucheur. So we have here with us the anti-corruption advisor from the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime. I've been told by Justice Willemesine that you have been one of the first persons who supported this idea when it was pitched. And I'm not going to ask you all those details, but perhaps one day, and I'm sure we will meet. And when we meet, I'd like to hear more. So let's hear that another time. But I'd like to mention UNODC played a major role when the Bangalore Principles for Judicial Conduct were drafted. Similarly, I know the UNODC has been very supportive of the drafting of the Nauru Declaration, as well as now the International Day for Judicial Well-being. What can you say about UNODC's role in promoting judicial well-being in view of the UN Declaration of the International Day for Judicial Well-being?
First of all, thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Pickering. It's a pleasure to be here today, and it's also very humbling to be with a distinguished panel as it is. I'd like to thank the Australian Catholic University for organizing this webinar and for the continuous support devoted to judicial well-being. And to frame answer, I think I need to explain that we've been very honored to be part of this journey and to have witnessed and also to have been given the chance to participate to the drafting of this declaration. Its adoption in Nauru on the 25th of July last year, and more recently to have supported the adoption of the resolution in the UN General Assembly declaring the 25th of July as the International Day of Judicial Well-being. The Nauru Declaration on Judicial Well-being represents a significant step forward, and we've heard it, in strengthening the implementation of Article 11 of the UN Convention Against Corruption. As we know, Article 11 emphasizes the importance of promoting measures to strengthen integrity among members of the judiciary. And while Article 11 underscores judicial integrity as a cornerstone of effective justice system, the link to the declaration, as we've heard just before, wasn't that clear before. So the Nauru Declaration is bringing in, if I may say, looking at this void and integrating the information there. The Nauru Declaration brings a very essential and also complementary focus on the well-being of judges and judicial officers. So the focus is critical because the well-being of judges, magistrates, and judicial officers is a key enabler of judicial independence, integrity, and also efficiency. And as Honorable Justice Leach mentioned, a survey conducted by UNODC Global Judicial Integrity Network during COVID shined a light on well-being experiences of judges from around the world and collected suggestions on how judiciary could better support judicial well-being. And the timing, I think, was also very key because it was a very difficult moment for everybody around the world. So the survey attracted response from around 800 judges and other judiciary members from 102 countries. And it found, and I have lots of statistics, but I will just draw here some of the key statistics. 76% of judges do not have sufficient time to maintain optimal physical and mental well-being. Yet, 69% felt that discussion about mental health and stress are a taboo in the judiciary. And we're hoping that through the adoption of the Nauru Declaration on Judicial Well-being and the 25th of July being the Judicial Well-being Day, this taboo is starting to fall. So the survey has provided valuable data that underscore the importance of well-being and maintaining judicial integrity and efficiency. And I think the suggestion from Justice Wimalasena to do more survey of this is really key. The initiative for this declaration, as we've heard, was spearheaded by Nauru through the President of the Court of Appeal, convened a dedicated drafting committee with justices and justices around the world, and integrated UNODC. And I had the chance to be in a number of the drafting meetings. And this committee work has been nothing short of exemplary. They were ambitious because it was a really big document at the beginning, but it went down to a very realistic document. And it was also key to integrate a very inclusive approach. And this was essential for the declaration feasibility. The effort of the committee were marked by precision and clarity, ensuring that the declaration was comprehensive, but also avoid unnecessary complexity. So we have those 7 key principles. UNODC is pleased to have the opportunity to continue this support and to support this initiative, which is addressing the growing recognition that the mental and physical health of judges and judicial officers has an impact on their ability to perform their duties effectively and ethically. By making judicial well-being a priority, we're not only safeguarding the integrity of the judiciary, but we're also ensuring that justice is administered fairly and without due influence. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Marie. It certainly looks like the UNODC has been a crucial partner in this entire process and has been what I would describe as a pillar of support for such an impactful initiative. So thank you for sharing your thoughts. We have here today with us Chief Justice of Papua New Guinea, the Honorable Sir Gibbs Salika. Chief Justice, I've learned that you've been a leading advocate for judicial well-being in the Pacific region. And not only that, you've led your judiciary by example by organizing judicial well-being sessions, workshops, and retreats for your judges. How do you think the objectives of the Nauru Declaration on Judicial Well-being could be advanced alongside the International Day for Judicial Well-being for the benefit of judges, and in this case, particularly in terms of its impact on the judiciaries in the Pacific region? Judge, I believe you're on mute. Thank you.
I'll start again. Thank you, Dr. Pickering, and for the university for arranging this webinar. And I thank all the organizers of this, yourself and others, to have me included in the panel. I was spoken to by the president of the Nauru Court of Appeal, Justice Wimala Sena, when he was looking for judges to participate in drafting this this document, this initial document, and so I'm happy to have been part of that discussions, and eventually on the 25th of July, we voted that declaration in Nauru to take it to the United Nations, and Justice Wimala Sena led us there, together with Dr. Shriver and Marie, who just spoke. And I want to thank them for their insights and for their professional assistance in leading us also during the course of that seminar in Nauru. I became Chief Justice only in 2018, although I've been a judge for quite a number of years. I've been a judge for 35 years. And so judges losing their lives during the course of service in the Papua New Guinea judiciary has been a concern for quite a while. Many of our young judges who are younger than me or were younger than me got appointed and they passed along the way. And I was wondering, geez, what's the cause of this? You know, are we paying enough attention to our own health and well-being, or are we just careless about, you know, doing things and not worrying about our own health? And so that's what led me to lead after becoming Chief Justice. I led the judges of our Papua New Guinea to a retreat on an island. And so we discussed. First of all, I got them to stand up. They all stood up, and I asked them, okay, remember when you first got appointed as judge, what did you look like? And after you served so many years as a judge, what do you look like now? Take a stock of yourself, and this is in relation to our physical. I was addressing the issue of the physical well-being of the judge. And I said, we need to take stock of what we are doing to ourselves, because what we eat, what we do, and everything else, you know, we live lonely lives, and of course you're tempted to do whatever on your own at home, and so I addressed the issue of our the judge's physical health then. But I was brought up in a church organization which preaches physical well-being, mental well-being, social well-being, and spiritual well-being. And so I said, okay, we've got to be realistic about our own. And I told my judges on that retreat, we need to be, we need to acknowledge that we are social beings. Yes, we live isolated lives, and sometimes you can either do things that is going to help you, physically, mentally, socially, and spiritually. Sometimes we've got to take those things ourselves. And I think Dr. Wimila mentioned it. Judges are responsible as a collectively, as an institution, for their own physical well-being and all that, and also individually as well, because individually you're on your own, either with your wife or your children who might still be young, but after they become adults, they leave and they live their own lives. And so at the end of the day, you're on your own, just with you and your wife, to either tear each other apart or live in peace. And so these are some of the issues that I was grappling with. When COVID struck, we lost 3 judges due to COVID, and then 2 other judges due to not being well physically. And that got me really wondering, okay, we are losing quite a lot of judges through just being purely either negligent or careless about our well-being. And so I think this Nauru declaration of Nauru judicial well-being, I think it is going to, since that time we had the retreats and the meetings, it has become an annual event. And this year we will have another retreat. Last year we had one, and it will become an annual event. Perhaps we might move it to the 25th of July each year, because it's that event that makes people, our judges, acutely aware of their physical being, not only their physical being, but their mental being, and the fact that we are all social beings, that we need to also interact with others. And I go to church, and that's one area where I'd like to go every time when I go to church, so that I can interact with people, take away all the other things out from my mind for that day only. And then when I get back to the house, I might get back to the same situation. But when you interact with other social beings, then some of those stresses might go away from you. But as I said, I go to church, and that's when your spiritual well-being also comes in as well. You get people to pray over you, pray for you, and you can also do the same for other colleagues as well, especially judges. We in the Pacific, a lot of our Pacific countries are Christian countries, and so on many of our occasions when we are gathering together, we would start proceedings with prayers and uphold each other through prayers. And so when we are doing that, we are spiritually upholding other brothers and sister judges in their work. And so I think that's how much I can contribute at this time in relation to how we have moved on. Those retreats, indeed, they remind us on a yearly basis or on a periodic basis all the time that our health is important. So thank you,
Justice. Thank you, Chief Justice Salika. I have to appreciate your proactive role in this space, and you actually raised very important aspects of judicial well-being that I believe can be further studies into the future as we look at the whole concept and what it means for the broader judiciaries globally. So I look forward to Justice Salika collaborations in the future between the Australian Catholic University and judiciaries in the Pacific to look into this further. Thank you.
Yes,
Dr. Carly
thank you.
Schruer. You're a psychologist as well as a lawyer who has conducted pioneering studies on judicial well-being in Australia. Also, you played a key role in drafting the Nauru Declaration on Judicial Well-being. In view of the UN endorsing judicial well-being as a matter of universal significance, I would like to invite you to share your thoughts on why judicial well-being is important.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pickering, and also Associate Professor Ola for hosting this webinar. And I extend that thanks to Australian Catholic University as well. Yes, the focus of my work has been on judicial wellbeing since 2014. And I will say that being able to work with the International Committee of Judges in drafting the Nauru Declaration was an absolute career highlight for me. And I'm very grateful to the UNODC and to Justice Wilma Lassina for including me in that process. My work began on this topic because a head of jurisdiction in the state where I am in Victoria, Australia, was noticing that he was losing his most senior and experienced judges earlier than their statutory retirement age. And he suspected it was due to burnout and other forms of chronic stress, but he had no data about the stress that judges experience. So I had a conversation with him, which led to my doctoral project, which measured judicial stress and well-being in Australia and sought to uncover some of the reasons for judicial stress. Why is it important? Well, as it's already been said by a number of the other speakers, this goes well and truly beyond how judges feel in their role, how happy they are. It really goes to the heart of ensuring a high-functioning, sustainable and legitimate judiciary in our society. The judiciary is a human system. It's a fundamentally human system, and therefore it is dependent upon the human faculties of the men and women appointed to judicial office. And so therefore a high-functioning judiciary is inextricably linked to the psychological well-being of the human beings that are fulfilling that function in our society. The research, and of course it is a little thin on the ground. So there are a number of studies now that have been conducted around the world, and I completely concur with what Justice Wilma Lassina said, is that we need more data from different regions. But my research and the UNODC's research and the other research that's been conducted in various other parts of the world has consistently shown that while this has been a taboo and hidden and unspoken topic for many, many years, judges the world over experience high levels of stress. And just to share a couple of statistics from my own research, judges in Australia experience elevated rates of psychological distress compared to the general population and even compared to barristers. And staggeringly, 30% of judicial officers are scoring in the range on a measure of secondary traumatic stress, scoring in the range suggestive of likely PTSD. And this is a statistic that has been replicated twice now in Australia in subsequent studies, including in a national study that I'm participating in. So we're talking about very high levels of psychological distress throughout the judiciary, coupled with a culture of not really talking about it much. Why do we care? So we know there is a high level of stress. Why do we care? Well, of course we care from the point of view of just caring about the human beings who are judges. We know that stress undermines the psychological and physical health of people experiencing it. It can contribute to anything from mental illness to heart disease to cancer. And in Australia, within the space of a few years, we lost 3 sitting judicial officers to suicide. So at its most extreme end, it can lead to the loss of life while in office. Beyond the experience of judges in the work, however, because of the role that judges fulfill in our society, and
sorry, we had a meeting.
They're placed within the court system and within the courtroom, judges' stress can have a broader impact. So we know from a lot of research in psychology that stress undermines our capacities for emotion regulation and impulse control, making it much more likely that we'll behave in ways we later regret in the courtroom. And this is where judicial well-being is related to other topics like judicial bullying and the experience of other professionals in the work that they do in the courtroom. We also know from decades of research in psychology that stress undermines our objectivity and critical thinking, making it predictably more likely that we will, that our decision-making will be infused with heuristics with unconscious bias and be more preserving of the status quo. Now, I should just say, I know I'm noting the time, I should just say that while stress can undermine these things, it doesn't have to. It is unacknowledged and unmanaged stress that has the potential to create the biggest problems. When stress is acknowledged and managed, then judges can be operating under quite a bit of stress and still fulfilling their functions really, really well. And of course, stress is much more likely to go unacknowledged and unmanaged in a culture where we're not talking about it. So research that shows us the extent of the problem, global conversations like this, the UN declaring an International Day is all part of legitimizing and normalizing this conversation so that this very real issue doesn't remain hidden, and we can start to address it both at the individual level and also at the institutional level. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Schwer. Thank you very much for giving us a deep understanding of why judicial well-being is important, and especially sharing the statistics, your expertise on the subject. So thank you very much. Now I'd like to turn to Chief Justice Brian Sykes of Jamaica. Chief Justice, I've heard that Jamaica was one of the first judiciaries that gave a commitment to implement the principles of the Nauru Declaration on Judicial Well-being. And also, I believe you once said that the biggest asset of the court is healthy judges, and it is so true. My question to you is, how do you think the Nauru Declaration for Judicial Well-being could be moved forward with the International Day for Judicial Well-being?
Thank you very much, Dr. Pickering. Thank the Australian Catholic University and my colleagues here on this discussion. Well, the question of judicial well-being is something that we have been speaking about here in our judiciary for some time. There's Miss Salmon, one of our judges in the parish courts, who has been raising the issue consistently over the last 3 years. And we decided to take a more critical look at it and to begin to implement aspects of practices relating to judicial well-being or orientation program and to include it in our seminars. But this declaration has helped us to be able to have a structure within which to do that more effectively. And certainly within the Caribbean region here, the Caribbean Association of Judicial Officers in November 22nd last year issued its own statement in which it made explicit reference to the Nauru Declaration, and critically it also spoke to the staff of the courts, because the courts cannot operate effectively without also the healthy staff supporting it. So we think that both of them go hand in hand. But what this declaration will do is that it will permit conversations to be had openly about the mental aspect of it, the physical aspect of it, and a connected area of it, which neither declaration mentions the financial aspect of it. Not that we hope the judges will become millionaires, but certainly in terms of the financial well-being of judges and being able to organize themselves and their affairs appropriately will also contribute to their well-being, because as you know, when persons are under financial stress, that can also lead to a deterioration in mental and emotional and physical health. So we think the financial aspect of the person, the psychological aspect of the person, the physical aspect of the person, judicial officers and court staff are all important. The declaration emphasizes that it's a shared responsibility. And so what they will do is to enable us to focus more on ourselves as a judiciary as to what it is that we have been doing, what we can do better, and how we can institutionalize the 7 important principles outlined there in the Nauru Declaration. And as a head of a judiciary, it is important to begin to encourage heads of judiciaries and heads of courts to begin to think of how you can implement this in a practical way within the judiciaries. So things like workload. How do you manage your day? How many cases do you set per day? Because we have a tendency as judges to set more cases that we can actually get through. And so that in and of itself puts you under unnecessary stress. The question of how you work as a judicial officer in a practical way. So you're hearing a number of cases. Some of us will try to produce written judgments in just about every case that we hear. It is not necessary. So those are practical things that the head of the judiciary can do to introduce the principles and ideas surrounding the Nauru Declaration. The other thing that we have been doing through our judicial secretary is to identify the leave that's available to judges, and when they're approaching their maximum leave that they can accumulate, we actually encourage them to go on leave. And one of the things that certain of my colleagues have not yet agreed with me on this, I've been saying to them that you can take breaks more frequently. So rather than you go on 70 days or 60 days, depending on how much leave you have, you can actually break it up over a period of time. So you can take, say, 10 days in one quarter, 11 days in another quarter, so that you can maintain optimum health and well-being. So our judiciary welcomed this declaration, and I had the opportunity of being in New York in the United Nations General Assembly when it was adopted, and we support it wholeheartedly. And we think it is essentially the Magna Carta of judicial well-being, and we know that it will go from strength to strength. So once again, thanking the Australian Catholic University for organizing this global conference this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Justice Sykes. I really appreciate your thoughts on how the Nauru Declaration for Judicial Well-being can be advanced alongside the International Day for Judicial Well-being. And your thoughts are incredibly valuable. Thank you very much. We are very fortunate to have Judge Victor Reyes join our panel discussion today. Judge Reyes, you have been a judicial educator in the United States and have been an advocate for judicial well-being for a very long time. So I would like to ask you, as a judicial educator in the United States, how do you believe the International Day for Judicial Well-being can serve as a catalyst for raising awareness within judiciaries? And if I could also ask you, what impact do you think these initiatives will have on the role of judicial leadership?
Thank you so much. And I just want to echo what everybody else has said. For me, it's an honor, and I'm very humbled to be with this incredible group of human beings from across the planet who've come together and done, in my mind, a couple of things. Number one, the declaration does recognize the issue. When I started off in law school in 1981, as a lawyer in 1984, and as a judge in 1999, these topics were not discussed. This was on anybody's radar. Judicial wellness, for me as a Colorado judge in 1999, was the grievance, the judicial complaints person showing up and tell you the things to do and not to do. Anything else was not addressed. So you've recognized the issue. To me, I get very emotional about this because I wish that these conversations would have been had when I was a judge, because my life would have been a lot healthier. It would have been a lot, I don't know what, my relationship with my children would have been. I don't know what my relationship with my friends would have been if I was in a position to be able to recognize the impact of the job on me as a human being. And what you've done, and I commend you so much for this, is you have given judges a voice. As I go through every one of those parts of that declaration, I can hear judges from around the world saying these things because I've been blessed enough to do trainings with judges around the world, and this is what they talk about. So you have been able to, in a very masterful way, give your fellow colleagues, and I love that Judge Sykes mentioned staff, because that is so important. They're sitting right next to us listening to the same things that we're listening to, having the same, experience with secondary trauma we're having. So I think it's very important to recognize the importance of our staff as we deal with these issues. So how do we raise the awareness? Well, the way we start raising the awareness, I think, is by implementing the declaration in, it doesn't have to be overt ways, but can be very, very subtle ways. I think what I have already started doing is including in every one of my trainings the Nauru Declaration. Very simple. We go through this, and the reason I use that is that we are not alone, that this is an international issue. Judges around the world are recognizing it. I know one of the first papers done on this was by a Canadian psychiatrist, Dr. Peter Jaffe, out of London, Ontario. Fantastic work. But as we raise the awareness, we lower the stigma. And part of, I think, what some retired, I'm a retired judge, been retired 10 years. One of the things that retired judges can do is share their stories. I have no problems whatsoever sharing the impact of the cases that had on me. The physical, psychological, emotional impacts. The impacts that I carry in some circumstances to this day as I drive by certain locations or something comes up in the news that triggers something. And this is 10 years out. So I think that part of this raising awareness are retired judges who aren't going to be criticized by their communities or somehow pointed out one way or the other as being less than because they are admitting that they're human beings. But I think there's a role for retired judges in what we're talking about. I love the fact that there's discussions of retreats. And part of the awareness is not only to make sure that judges understand that they are susceptible to stress, the effects of stress. And a lot of the focus is secondary trauma, having sat on criminal cases for many years. But I think we also need our communities, my neighbors, to recognize what I go through. The one-time community members do come up to judges and say, wow, I don't think I could do your job, is when they've sat as jurors for maybe 3 days, 2 weeks, and then they come up to you afterwards saying, I don't know how you sit here every day. So I think part of the awareness is not only among the judiciary, not only among the governmental people who may have access to finances that could help maybe more judges or watch with caseloads, but also a general outreach to the community so that they gain a better understanding of what judges are going through, the stressors that are inherent in the job, and how to be best supported. And when I look at this panel, my heart is so just warmed by the fact that I'm looking at chief justices of their judiciaries taking this incentive. Oh my God, when Chief Judge Soiko was talking about retreats, leading retreats for his judges, they are so blessed to have somebody with such insight in your community. Nauru is blessed to have you sitting, as a judge and leading this. Your staff in Jamaica is so blessed that you are considering them in this picture. And of course, Canada, I know that I was being even approached by the immigration judges in Canada to have these discussions. So where it becomes, the leadership goes from the top, which are the chief justices of each of the states or each of the nations, however it's done. But also every district usually has a presiding judge. and that those presiding judges recognize the importance of supporting their fellow judges. There's a presiding judge in Cook County, Illinois, Judge Timothy Evans. And I've had the pleasure to train now twice in Cook County because he's committed that every judge in Cook County is going to address this issue of wellness and increasing resilience. So thank you.
Dr. Pickering, you're muted.
Thank you, Judge Reyes, for your thoughtful response. I know you have a lot of experience as an expert who's been involved in educating judges globally. So thank you very much. We are honored to have you here. So thank you so much for sharing your valuable thoughts and perspectives on this initiative. Before we go, I hand over to Associate Professor Kunle Ola. I have just one question, and this is for Justice Leach. Justice Leach, judicial well-being is clearly an important issue in Canada, and that's your jurisdiction. The Commonwealth Magistrates and Judges Association has also done significant work in this area. Could you share with us very briefly some of the programs that you've been involved in, or perhaps highlight any initiatives you would consider launching to observe the upcoming International Day for Judicial Well-being on the 25th of July? Thank you.
I think you
just
have to
did what everybody-
unmute. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Pickering. I'll respond to the question, if I might, on behalf of the Commonwealth Magistrates and Judges Association, who I represented as part of this working group. There is a great deal of interest in the creation of this declaration. We were very proud to have many of the members of the Commonwealth who were part of the drafting committee. The representatives who are here today are part of the Commonwealth. They heard that we were working on this. We were able to give an update of where we were at our annual conference in September. We have been providing very encouraging updates as to the adherence to or adoption of the declaration around the Commonwealth. Very excited to learn of the declaration of the Judicial Day of Wellness for July the 25th. At our next annual conference, we're going to have a session dedicated to judicial wellness that we're very much looking forward to promoting the declaration, the concept of addressing judicial wellness, the exchange of best practices and ideas. I know it's going to include, for example, Chief Justice Sykes, who's been very proactive in moving forward in his jurisdiction. So we are at still, I would say, an awareness increasing stage. We are encouraging promotion, and we are hoping to have more and more implementation of good practices around the Commonwealth.
Thank you, Justice Leach. Thank you for your thoughts on programs and initiatives. I was quite interested in that, so much appreciated. So thank you very much for sharing your experience and thoughts on this landmark milestone in judicial history, and my thanks goes to the esteemed panelists. It's been a privilege hearing your perspectives. I would like to now hand over the session to the chair of the session, Associate Professor Ola, to continue. Thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Pickering. And I would like to express my sincere gratitude to every member of the panel. I mean, just listening to your thoughts, just listening to what you shared has been, very insightful. But I would also like to especially thank the government of Nauru for their active role in actually giving us the opportunity to start this, because they led the way to the adoption of the Nauru Declaration, sponsoring the resolution. And this is the typical interesting thing. Great things could come from the smallest things, and that's what we're seeing here. And I'd just like to remind us once again that the inaugural International Day for Judicial Well-being is going to come very soon. So let's all put on our thinking caps and let's be ready for a revolution that has started. And as each one of us were speaking, we all kind of alluded to it. I was listening to Justice Salika, who mentioned about the retreat, and I just felt it was so great that we have a Chief Justice who is thinking in this direction. I listened to Justice Lynn, thinking of the interest of the Commonwealth and the fact that this is going to be addressed in the next session. Justice Womenashena's suggestion that all judiciaries, should use the International Day for Judicial Well-being to conduct, a survey. That's a wonderful suggestion. While listening to Dr. Carly, and her sharing the data, I mean, this is deep work. If you're into research and you gather data, you would understand the nature, the psychology, and what people are going through. So her sharing this data, I mean, about the level of stress among judges, it raised the level of concern, but at the same time, it underscored the importance of why we have the Nauru Declaration and why we have the International Day for Judicial Well-being. And of course, we're so grateful to Mary, whose continued support for judicial well-being, the survey, funding. I mean, for instance, the work we are doing, they're providing support there, for our survey. And just listening to Justice Brian, he couched the Nauru Declaration in a way that I think we're going to arch, on a wall, because he said it's the Magna Carta of judicial well-being. And I felt, oh, this is something we should post, on Instagram. Unfortunately, I don't have an Instagram page, but I can put it on my LinkedIn page. He used that phrase, is the Magna Carta of judicial well-being. And in a similar way, while listening to Justice Victor, he said the Nauru Declaration has given judges a voice. And I felt, I mean, these are important things that we've brought up here. One of the other things he mentioned was that, as we raise the awareness level, we lower the stigma. And he said, if given the opportunity, he would love to share his story. And I just thought this could be a theme for the next inaugural International Day, for judicial well-being, sharing our stories, judges sharing their stories. So there is a lot that we've heard, that we've learned, that we've expressed today. And I really want to say a big thank you to our distinguished panelists. I also like to use this opportunity to thank Dr. Ann Pickering, Chi Deng, Justice Womenasheena, for the hard work that they've put, into making this webinar, a success. I know I'm not supposed to talk too long, but it looks like we in the in the legal field, we just can't but talk. But I just want to really say thank you to everyone, and also to the leadership of the university who has shown great support for judicial well-being. I think it's without a doubt that judicial well-being is a very important issue, not just for judges, not just for the judiciary, but for the whole society. Like I started, if judges are not okay, they can't give good judgment. So it's everybody's responsibility to work together towards ensuring judicial well-being. So I'd like to say a big thank you once again to everyone, and we look forward to your joining us at the inaugural International Day for Judicial Well-being. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.